Burwellbeing with Sally Lander.
Hello, I'm Sally Lander, a yoga teacher living and teaching in Burwell. Welcome to my interview program, Burwellbeing. Over the next few weeks and months, I'm going to interview some of the people at the centre of Burwell's wellbeing. Today is the 16th of January 2021, and we're right in the middle of the third lockdown, and I'm lucky enough to be speaking to Dr. Alex Manning. I think of Alex as being the face and voice of our village doctor's surgery. He's been a partner at Burwell Surgery for 20 years now, and it's him who updates the surgery's information pages on their website and keeps us informed on Facebook too. And on a personal note, my family moved to Burwell 2 and a bit years ago. The whole surgery team has been wonderful every time we've been in touch, but it's mostly Dr. Manning who's looked after us. My parents are 91 and 92, and this year has been hard for them. Dr. Manning has spent hours, literally hours, patiently listening to their stories and explaining what's going on as they negotiate their changing physical and mental health issues. Yesterday, I reminded my mother that I was going to talk to Dr. Manning today. She was so excited, and she said, "We love him."
Oh, thank you so much.
So I want to talk to Alex about his personal relationship with wellbeing issues, but perhaps, we just have to begin with COVID. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. I know that you and your family tested positive in early December. We're talking on Zoom and you look incredibly well. How are you all now?
Thank you so much for having me on the programme, Sally, and for the kind words. So both myself, 3 children and my mother-in-law all tested positive for COVID on around the 4th of December. I had mild flu-like symptoms and was a bit more tired than normal for a week, and then I'm grateful to have made a full recovery. My children didn't have any symptoms at all, and my mother-in-law, fortunately, she's obviously a bit older, seems to be okay as well. So we seem to have got off quite lightly, thank you very much, and all seems to be well now.
Thank goodness. So how did the ups and downs of 2020 affect your work? And how has the situation changed?
Yeah, so I think it's obviously changed life here at the surgery quite profoundly, and perhaps not in the way that people would have initially thought. Certainly in the first wave, March, April, May, it got relatively quiet, which was a bit eerie, weird and unsettling. We found that the number of people who are coming to see us really, really dropped off, which really worried us. We know that locally cancer referrals dropped at one point to about a fifth of what we thought they should be. Lots of heart attacks and strokes weren't presenting. We just don't know what happened to those people. I mean, people must have been sitting at home with things that really we were very worried that they shouldn't be. And so that was a real concern. And we implemented, as many will know, this Ask My GP system, which we hoped would allow people to access us in a safer way now. I think there's a worry that by choosing to access it as electronically or on the telephone or video, which we're increasingly doing these days, may be seen as a barrier to some, but we're hoping that will allow a lot of people to access this way, which will be easier for some. And then for those who don't want to use that means of getting to us, and they should be able to get through on the phone safely. And we still absolutely are very happy to see people face to face, just like to have that conversation first to make sure that is the best way of addressing people's problems in the safest way that we can. So we were operating when we still do a remote way of working for some staff members. Usually now it's for people either who are self-isolating, and we've had another colleague who's had COVID recently for staff point of view. And in this wave, I think there's a fair amount of COVID around the village. So we started getting reliable stats from the government testing centre in November, I think. So I can't really tell you how many cases were in the first wave, and I think less people were getting tested. But in the village, in our patients, bearing in mind we've got 8,500 patients, about 85% of which are in the village, we had 13 positive results notified to us in November, 112 in December, and so far in the 2 weeks in January, we've had 53. Quite a lot. Just thinking in the village, in Burwell, 112 patients diagnosed with COVID in a month. And January, it feels to me that's kind of similar to the rate so far in December, so maybe we are peaking, but but I don't think we've got through that peak yet. So definitely people know that there's quite a lot around the village. You know that there are people who've got it. People are having their own journeys with that, and most people are getting through it okay. We always hear about the depressing stories of people who have a rough time with it in on the media, but there's only overall a very low mortality, and most people don't end up in hospital. But a lot of people do have a pretty tough time with it. There was some communication from Addenbrooke's on Friday. We know that currently they've got 243 patients in Addenbrooke's, of which they've got 60 officially in critical care, 89 are receiving critical care. So I think they've got a few people coxing in other wards. And their CEO said on Friday that until last week, they were having an exponential increase in admissions, and that topped out at about 25 patients per day. Last week, it's reduced slightly to 23.7 patients per day. So it feels that it is flattening out a little bit, which one hopes means the lockdown is actually having an effect. And that was actually a bit sooner than their modelers were predicting. So they still think they're going to get more patients. They're thinking at the moment it's going to top out about between 300 and 350 patients in Addenbrooke's over the next few weeks before it goes down again. But we've got a bit of a way to go through this second wave yet. And I appreciate how hard it is for everyone. Obviously, we all know about the importance of the safety measures, the distancing, the using PPE for us. Certainly, we're all testing now twice a week. And I think we've just got to stay strong, supporting, looking after each other. We talked about well-being, and clearly in this COVID lockdown environment that we're living in, it's absolutely important that we look after each other as best we can and adapt the methods that we've got for our well-being to this new environment we're now living in.
Yes. I wanted to ask a little bit about the vaccinations next.
Yeah. So vaccinations definitely are coming. They are here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the process for how we are booking them at the moment and where we're up to. We have joined forces with SOAM, who are providing the vaccination program for both ourselves and Haddenham, so 3 practices. And the reasons we've done this, because essentially 2 of the 3 brands of vaccine that are available at the moment need to be stored at -70. They have to be administered in a very careful way. Just didn't make sense for smaller practices to do this in isolation. So whilst I appreciate it's a bit of a hassle to go to SOAM, they're operating a very efficient system. We're just asking people to go with it. The chance of us actually being able to administer many vaccinations from here, from the surgery, even with the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, which is slightly less draconian in its storage requirements, it's really not going to happen, at least for a while. And, we want to get many people vaccinated as possible. So where we're up to at the minute is we're focusing on the 9 groups as stipulated by the government's Joint Committee on Vaccination. They're focused on care home residents to start with. We've done all our care home residents now, and across the county in Ely, who are grouping, pretty much all care homes have been done other than one in Ely, which has got a bit of an outbreak at the moment. Then the next group is over 80-year-olds. I'm pleased to say that of our over 500 over 80-year-olds in the village and our patients, currently as we speak, only 12 have not got their appointments booked or have had the vaccinations, and many people have had 2 vaccinations. And I'd like to say that around the county, and I don't want to show off about it, but our programme is much further ahead than most areas in the county, which have only just started. So we are absolutely trying to crack through as many people as possible as quickly as we can. So the system's based on searches of our GP system. So there's a web-based search system. They tell us which groups are we able to vaccinate. We upload a list of our patients to the system, and then it's based on mobile phones. So you will get a text as soon as we can offer a vaccination. And if you have a smartphone and you look into the text, you can book your own appointment. There was a question mark about, okay, which of the over 80-year-olds are we prioritizing? Essentially, if you happen to have a mobile phone that you can book an appointment with a smartphone, I'm afraid you will have had that opportunity probably first before those have been manually booked, because it just is so much easier for patients to go ahead and book their own appointments as soon as they're available. And in fact, of our over 80-year-olds, roughly half of those people managed to book their own appointments within 24 hours of receiving a text. Thumbs up to our over 80-year-olds. I think many, you think, okay, that might disadvantage that group, but actually a lot of our folk are really, really good on IT, having to Zoom and all that stuff we're doing, our relatives. I think everyone's stepped up to the plate. And for those who aren't, our reception staff have been working loads of shifts, booking people in manually. So, and we've now, as I say, got to that 12, and I suspect most of those 12 are going to be having to be vaccinated at home because of mobility problems and so on. And that's proving a bit more complicated to organise the home vaccinations because the vaccinations got really strict rules about how they're moved, and the most easiest movable group of the vaccines are our AstraZeneca group. But once you've withdrawn a vaccination out of a vial, and bear in mind there are between 7 and 9 doses per vial, you can't move it again. So if you've got a group of patients, so like our Ashgrovers or our Nestcourters, for example, we could probably work around that. But if you're by yourself, we've just got to think through the process by which we can administer this in a way that doesn't mean we have to use a vial per patient. So it's being worked through at the moment. Probably our district nurses are going to be helping us with that, but it's proving complicated. So we were really keen to do those groups who are at home by themselves quickly. But essentially, we will, as soon as we can offer vaccinations to all of the different groups, so we're almost done with the over 80-year-olds. The next group is going to be health and social care workers. The surgery staff has largely been done now, but there are a large group of carers, professionally supported, lots of other groups who are eligible, who are going to be done. We'll be cracking through them, and essentially we're going to be getting through all of those other groups, largely that's dictated by age, and obviously people are clinically vulnerable, absolutely as quickly as we possibly can, and largely that's determined by the supply of vaccine we're allowed to have. As soon as we get the vaccine, we are going to be giving it to people. So watch out for those texts, and if they come through, if you can book your own appointment, go ahead and do it. If you find there are no appointments on there, please keep trying, because there are appointments going on all the time, and the appointments will be quick after you get the text, because we don't want to allow people to have the access to the appointments unless we're absolutely confident the vaccine is available for that appointment. And the vaccine deliveries have been a bit shaky, and as soon as we know for sure the vaccine is coming in pretty quickly. When you get that text, and bearing in mind the appointments are released to all the surgeries at the same time, so you're kind of competing against Hadnam and Soham patients essentially. I know it sounds a bit odd, but as soon as you get that text, book the appointments. We will support you if you don't book that appointment to get that appointment as quickly as we can, but please go ahead and book when you get that text come through. And if you can update our surgery with your active mobile number, if you haven't done, and enable texting, that would be really helpful, so we can really get you through to those vaccination appointments ASAP.
Brilliant. I've got some follow-up questions, and I feel that probably the answers are partly embedded in what you've already said or really obvious. But I think one of the principal questions is the fear that people have of being left out.
Yep.
That the system won't catch them. And there's a lot of rumours flying.
Well, I think the short answer is we hope that isn't going to happen. I mean, the searches are pretty straightforward because most of them are based on age category. So if you are registered as our patient and we've got your date of birth, you will be called up because the search is based on our computer system. We've had some people who feel that maybe their situation means they're not getting sufficient priority, which I can understand. We're sticking to the government guidance, which I'm not entirely sure always makes sense. But to be honest with you, if we deviate from that, we're going to create problems both for ourselves and for other patients and other surgeries. Yeah. So if you feel that if you've been missed, certainly if you're over 80 and you haven't had a call up yet, or if you're the relative of an over 80-year-old who's a Burwell patient, call reception. It may be we haven't been able to get hold of you, or there's a problem with it, but we should hear by text. We will be putting comms out on Facebook and our website for those groups who are being called up as well. If you haven't had a call up and you feel you should be, it will be gradually going down the age group. So I'm afraid the over 50-year-olds who are group 9, it will be later on. So I'd advise, please don't call us before you get a text, really. So it goes down in age in group 5 years. So it's over 80s, over 75s, over 70s, and all the way down to over 50s. And Matt Hancock has been saying something about being offered to over 18s by the autumn. So I don't know. He may have some other ideas of other groups he wants us to do after that. I don't know. Okay. But there will be people with underlying health conditions. That might be what he means. But we tend to hear things through the BBC first. But as far as we know, we're going on the vaccination committee recommendations, which go down those 9 groups, essentially in age, until you get down to the over 50s. You will be notified either by text or a call from our reception quickly within, a matter of days if you are to be called up. So that lower group, it might be a few weeks yet, to be honest with you, but we are absolutely doing
this is fantastic. And above the over 65s is the NHS shielded. And then I'm just looking at a list I got from the government website.
The care home ones are group 1, which are largely done. Group 2, which are the over 80-year-olds and frontline health and care social workers or care workers. So the over 80-year-olds are pretty much done, apart from a few housebound and a few we haven't been able to get hold of. The frontline health and social care workers are next. Then it's over 75s, and then it's over 70 and clinically extremely vulnerable individuals. So that's your shielded patients in group 4. Then it's over 65s. Then it's 60s to 64s, underlying health conditions, over 60s, over 55s, over 50s.
Great.
That's the groups that have been stipulated. Yeah. So the searches will come generated from those particular data. We've got accurate information about all of those guys because, these are the groups we're doing flu vaccinations on at the moment. We know exactly who these people are, and we will be calling people. I know there has been the odd shielded patient who's been missed. We've, I think, now updated our records, so it's reasonably accurate. We've had a few people who've been on the shielded list who shouldn't have been, which has caused some distress. Our list should be pretty accurate. If you don't think the things are right, then let us know. But essentially, we should be calling up those guys pretty accurately.
I had one really specific case that a friend asked me to talk to you about, because she's a home carer caring for a clinically extremely vulnerable person, her husband, and I think that she's a couple of categories below him. She's young. And, she leaves the home for essential reasons. She's putting herself at risk. And she feels, if she were to become ill, then there would be no one to look after him. But I'm hoping that I can tell her that you're piling through them. You by that time you're piling through them, and she shouldn't be too far behind.
No, I think we've had a number of cases like this, and for example, an elderly couple, his 78-year-old looking after an 81-year-old husband with dementia. It's a bit of a struggle to get to the centre. Wouldn't it make sense to do them both together? Unfortunately, that's not the case at the moment. So the 81-year-old will be done now. The over 7, the other lady will be done in a week or two's time. Once so
the gaps are small. I think
they should be small. I mean, we've got the health and social care workers to do now. I don't know quite how long they're going to take to do, but I think that your friend's concern. I mean, I've a lot of sympathy for people who are caring. We've got a lot of carers in the village. There's amazing work. In my heart, I feel it would be nice to prioritise those people. And people who are professionally caring, I can see they've got an occupational role. To discriminate in some ways to people just because you're not employed to do it, it's really harsh. But I think the government guidance is not prioritising that more than your age category. Having to stick to that. And the only thing I would say, it is quite hard to define what makes a carer. You could argue that you're a carer for your children and single mums, and I accept the fact is where you draw the line. I'm not brilliantly comfortable about it because I know a lot of carers would, a lot of people would go into hospital if I've had situations in the village where, carers have got COVID and it's made the situation extremely difficult to manage. And of course, then care companies don't want to come in. If that patient can't cope, the care, trying to get them to residential care is extremely difficult because the residential care home doesn't want somebody who's got COVID or may have it exposed. So it's a whole nightmare of situations. But currently we're having to stick to the government guidance. And unfortunately, that carer would not get priority over their age group. I'm afraid.
Okay, and we hope we're just moving through this quickly.
Absolutely.
I really wanted to get off COVID, but I've got just a few more questions on COVID. Yeah. We hear about people refusing vaccinations. Are you experiencing that?
We've had one or two, and people have strong views about this. I think not a lot of them are based in reality, in the sense I know people are quite worried about reactions. There's been talk about allergies to vaccinations. A couple of people reacted to the Pfizer vaccination. You can be allergic to anything, but I'd say the vast majority of allergies are not contraindications to these vaccinations. It's only if you've got a specific allergy to a component in the vaccination. I would strongly advise people to go ahead. If you've got concerns, please discuss them with us. A lot of the other concerns people have, it just depends on your view of vaccination, generally speaking, but I think the most people feel that there's a really good indication for not getting COVID, and these vaccinations are very effective and the reactions people have to them are mild. So I can't really see why you wouldn't want it. And it really is only 1 or 2 people who've refused them so
Fantastic.
far. And the vast majority of people have been really keen to get on with it, I think.
Yeah, I think I've only got one more COVID question. As you go around the village, how would you like to see us behaving now in this, January 2021?
I think it's just being really careful and when we're being human and interacting. It's so easy when you see people out and about to stop and have a chat. When you're in the co-op, it's really difficult, I think, to be distanced all the time. Just being really careful. I mean, the last half dozen people I've spoken to who've got COVID have said to me, I don't know where I got it from. This new variant is really contagious and it only takes a drop in guard for a second. When I got COVID, I think I transmitted it to a member of staff, probably on a bit of paper. It's difficult, they're saying that nationally the R number is still above 1, despite being in lockdown. So I think we can only do what we can do. And I think it's important that we do exercise. It's important we do shop. But it just takes a second when your guard is down. So just think about your day, those little vulnerable moments, and just be as careful as you can be. That's all you can do, I think.
Thank you. I see people standing, including me, standing and talking in the streets. So I've gone for a walk. I'm not wearing my mask. I meet a friend. And I'm sort of guessing how far I need to stand from them as we have our talk. But we're so excited to see each other.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't, and I think there's not a real right. It's not like 2 meters is obviously the guidance without masks. There's nothing that's completely safe and nothing that's completely wrong. Yes. But obviously, the further you are apart, if you can be more than 2 meters, and then that's better. Obviously, outside is a bit safer. Not like any distance is a passport to safety, but I think it's really nice to have a chat.
It's so lovely, isn't it?
When you're out and about and you see someone, you haven't seen anyone for ages. It would be inhuman not to say hello, and I think we all feel our mental health, we know, is suffering. Yes. And just to have a bit of a few moments with somebody, just to know that they're still thinking of you and talking, is lovely and really important. Isn't it? Accepting the fact if someone they're not being socially unpleasant to you, they're just trying to be safe, the edging away thing that we all do, crossing the street. We've got to do it. Yeah. Going down the weirs the other day, and I mean, there must have been 10 groups of 2 people kind of standing apart, like on the circuit, and I think we've got to be creative where we go out exercising as well, because I know we're not allowed to go too far, and there's only so many places you can go, and we have got more options. Look at the pictures of the parks in London, don't you, with all these people in the same place. Okay, we'll get off it now and back to the jollier questions. Alex, what do you love about Burwell? I think it's both the people and the place. It's a wonderful community. We are. I am a tremendously resourceful, caring, and I think in COVID times quite self-sufficient as well. You think about the times you actually have to leave the village. There is a lot of stuff in here, and the skills that people have, both professionally, I think all the businesses that actually do stuff in the village are fantastic. If you get something done, it's usually to incredibly high quality, and the skills that people have got at home. Talking about the people on Etsy, the crafters, people who offer services, it's all good. There's everyone's got so much to offer in the village, and the resourcefulness, the ability to look after, especially during these 2 COVID waves, groups that have been coordinating services have been amazing. And I think it's just what a village is meant to be. I think we've got that critical mass where we can sustain this community, but people invest so much energy into keeping it going. I think it's fantastic. And from the place point of view, we're just in such a wonderful environment, aren't we? I think running around the village, I like to run Wicken Fen, to the Cam out the back, Devil's Dyke, Newmarket Heath. I mean, what lovely places. I take the dogs, running between the conics the last weekend, just beautiful. My dogs do tend to have a bit of a nibble at those Highland cows, which I kind of squarey things, but you see Ely Cathedral through the mist, Newmarket Heath in the morning, Cockup Bridge in the sunrise and sunset. It's just, who could ask for more, really? It's a lovely environment to live and a lovely community to be part of, I think.
It's fantastic, isn't it? And tell us a bit more about how your relationship with Burwell developed.
Originally, I kind of came here by chance because we wanted to settle around here because some of my wife's family lived in the area, and I was working in Africa at the time in Namibia for an outfit called Voluntary Service Overseas who send volunteers abroad, and I was looking for a job in the area, and lo and behold an ad came up in the electronic BMJ for Burwell, and I went to the interview and I was really blown away by the doctors there, particularly Anne Schneers, and I've decided not to name drop too many people in this. I could talk about loads of wonderful people in the village, but I'd be worried about alienating everybody else. But Anne's just lovely. And so I just really made me feel that this was somewhere I wanted to live and work. And I worked here for 15 years as a GP before moving to the village and bringing my family here. Having had the kids go to the village school, got one in Bosham at the moment, and a couple who've moved a bit beyond that, using the same stuff that everyone used, the kids going to the football team, standing the sidelines every weekend, just using the stuff everyone uses in the village, get a real sense of the community, what's going on. And I just think you talked a bit about the round of takeaways that I have to do on a Saturday night. I start off with the kebab van, then you go to the Chinese, then you go to the Indian takeaway, the chip van, because of none of my family can agree what they want. I don't think that's possible now in COVID times, but it's to be able to do that and try and keep my irritatingly kind of pernickety family happy at any point is amazing, and they're all great. So I suppose the relationship with the village, it does extend to the practice as well. We very much see ourselves as the village practice and have that real sense of relationship between the practice and the village. We really feel very strongly about that, and I think we feel really happy that the village thinks highly of us. And we feel really privileged to be in that position, and we really work very hard and feel very importantly that we need to do everything we can to maintain that. So I suppose it's my relationship with the village, the families and the practices.
Yes. I asked a few people I know if they'd like to say anything to you. And my brother would like me to thank you for being so reassuring in all our consultations about my parents, and to ask you, were you always as comfortable talking to patients as you are now?
Thank you very much for those very, very kind words. And I'm sure there are some people listening to this who don't like me and don't like the consultations. And it seems to me that when you're talking to people, and whether it's to patients or everybody else, a lot of it is about reflecting on yourself and your ability to understand yourself and how you are perceived by others. So when I speak to someone, especially if it doesn't go well, you reflect on perhaps why that was, what you could have done differently about that. Now, I don't want to get too psychological about it, but you reflect on your own relationships with your family, with your parents, your interactions, and how you come across to people. And I work very hard to try and make sure that we're having to learn how to talk to people differently. We're talking to people on the email, on the Ask My GP. It's quite a different skill. You can imagine when you email somebody, you communicate in a certain way. I think through video is different, through the telephone is different, and face-to-face is different. So we're constantly looking at how we talk to people, and I'm really happy if people like that. In Burwell, we try and operate a system where patients can largely choose the doctor they want to see. And I think that helps us both to shake down to people that we're comfortable with. It's something I certainly don't take for granted. I work very hard at. And if people like talking or consultations with me, I'm really, really happy about that. But I know it doesn't always go well. And we always try and learn from that and take what I can and do it better in the future.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think you've largely talked to us and my parents over the phone, and that's perfect for them. The very last question now. Based on all your expertise, can you give us a tip or two for maintaining our health and well-being?
I think that people often know what's best for them, and it's about being honest with yourself and trying to do what you feel is right for you. And if there are some barriers for those things, trying to wrestle with yourself to change those. And especially we're in a new year, New Year's resolution, there is opportunities, I think, to change things for the better. So certainly we're all having to adapt in lockdown. And I think from the physical fitness point of view, it suits some better than others. If you like to walk, run, bike, do Joe Wicks, all of those things, that it sometimes makes things easier because you haven't got less distractions and you can get on with that sort of thing. But clearly a lot of people are having to adapt and think about how they can change things. I think eating and drinking, I worry a bit about that. Somebody said to me the other day there is less of a barrier between them and their fridge, and there's definitely increased drinking in some people, alcohol wise. That is, we know that that is more of a challenge to manage in a different way. And I think that feeds into the stress, mental health things. Comfort eating is a short-term buzz before the kind of long-term bad things then happen. You feel guilty about it and all the effects of it. Same with alcohol. You get initial buzz and then, of course, it comes home to bite. So I think for me, a steady routine helps. I think fitting in regular exercise helps. A healthy diet, if you can, is a good thing. If you can do a creative outlet, as you probably know, I'm a world-renowned international rock star as part of the legendary Now Wash Your Hands rock band, which works for me. I think yoga is fantastic. Pilates, we're increasingly trying to encourage people with core strength. I tend to focus on the aerobic stuff too much, and I know I could do more on my strength and balance. So I think it's just thinking about what works for you, being honest with yourself, and just saying, actually, we've got to make some changes with the challenges of COVID. Now, I talked about getting hugs when you can. We've got to look after each other. These are tough times, and there is more stress at home at the moment, managing children homeschooling and working from home for those who are in that bracket, the challenges of financial pressures, furloughing, difficulties with work, being isolated. All of those things are really, really tough. I think it's more challenging and stressful being at home for some people than it was. I mean, at least I can go to work. These are tough times, but I think it's about doing what you can under the circumstances, and there's a lot you can do.
Yeah, good. And I strongly took the thing about the virtual hugs. I'm in such a massive hug deficit. Yoga students are very huggy, and seeing them all online it's not the same. So we've got a lot of hugs to catch up with when we eventually get through all of this.
Physical contact, I don't know quite what the long-term effects are going to be, but got people at home you can hug and you want to hug them.
Yep. Yes. Oh, Alex, we came back round to COVID. It's just completely unavoidable, isn't it? But
we are at our worst point, I think, is the bottom line, but we are bottoming out of that. We're going to get those vaccinations done, and we're going to get through this.
Yeah. The days are getting longer. We're getting there. Yeah.
We are.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
No problem, Sally. All the best.
Burwellbeing with Sally Lander.